What's up everybody, Matt Moran here for another car review. This is of course the 2018 Hyundai Elantra Sport. Huge thanks to Joe of #1 Cochran Hyundai Monroeville for providing me with this very sweet Elantra Sport to review for you guys today. So about the Elantra Sport, well, this was introduced for the 2017 model year and carries over into 2018 here basically unchanged. But I really like the Elantra Sport's look. It's obviously, more aggressive since this is the faster model. So you have, a lot of really cool little details though. Of course, you have the more aggressive front bumper, which looks very good. And you have the turbo badge there. But even like you have red accents to here in the headlights. The headlights look a little angrier than they do on a standard Elantra. And so up front here, it just has a really nice and, still understated, it's not over the top like some of the others out there. Just nice and mature, but still aggressive looking look to it here up front. And I think it looks really good. Coming down to the sides here, you have the nice 18-inch wheels with larger brakes you get here on the Sport. Going out back, you have, again, the same theme continued on in the taillights there as you see in the headlights, and really makes for a classy looking back end, I think. And, you have the little rear diffuser there in the bottom with an exhaust finisher tip that looks good. And overall, I think it's a really nice small little car. A lot of ones, other competitors look either squished or just are a little too dramatic, and this I think is just all the right amounts of dramatic in the right places without being over the top and not looking boring looking at all either. I think it's a really good looking little car. Rest of the interior of the Elantra Sport. Well, it's actually a really cool place to be. So anyway, first things first, sitting down in these seats, you have these nice leather seats in the Elantra Sport with the red stitching and really nice and beefy bolstering on the seats here too, especially up at the torso. It really hugs you in place nicely. Obviously, it's not too tight. It still is good for most body types, but just actually pretty snug seats. Thigh support here on the bottoms is also really good too. It comes up nice enough so that it holds you in place pretty well here. And they're not the softest seats, but they do have a good amount of comfort to them still. And overall, they're just pretty comfortable seats. Next to the steering wheel here in the Elantra Sport, which is really cool. It has a nice flat bottom to it, some red accents, red stitching, has a really great 9-3 grip, nice little 10 and 2 notches, a decent amount of buttons here on the front of it, but nothing too confusing. You do have paddle shifters, which is really nice. This is the 7-speed dual clutch automatic version, and they're nicely placed, but they do feel pretty cheap. I mean, again, we are talking about a low $20,000 car, but still, I think some of the competitors have slightly nicer feeling shifter paddles, even if they aren't metal or anything, but they're still, good enough. Gauges in the Elantra Sport are also nice and attractive looking, a little bit sportier than regular Elantras once again, with some, I think, more sporty looking graphics on them. I like how you have a bunch of the numbers on the speedometer there on the right-hand side, 120, 140, 160, they're all kind of bunched together. Looks kind of cool. In the middle there, you do have a little display. It is not color, but it does all the basic stuff, nothing too fancy. But again, you have to remember the price point we're in here. And so I do like that it has, a little digital speedometer as a handy feature, and, a few of the other things in there for trip information and whatnot. And so overall, a pretty good set of gauges. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, right up top, first off, you have an 8-inch display here, because this one has the premium package, which also gives you the automatic climate control you see here as well, and a few other little things. I think the auto dimming rearview mirror. But anyway, there's not a huge difference between the 8-inch display and the 7-inch display. They both still have standard Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is really nice. I believe the 8-inch display is supposed to have navigation, but this specific car does not have it installed here. But, it's your typical Hyundai infotainment, which is pretty good. You have the little quadrants, I suppose, and you have, basic audio controls, things like that. All, nicely set up here. You do have volume and tune knobs, which is great to see, and they feel pretty good as well for the class. And, you have a little row of buttons here, and that's it. Speaking of the radio, though, this also part of the premium package. You get this upgraded Infinity stereo, which I believe has 8 speakers instead of the regular one having 6. So that's a nice little upgrade, and I'm not able to sample more than just the basic, FM radio stations, but does sound pretty powerful, again, from what you can judge from that. Coming down to the climate controls here, just your basic Hyundai auto climate control setup here, and, it works really well, obviously. Just a few buttons and, very simple and straightforward. I believe the manual controls are also still great in the regular Elantra Sport if you don't get the premium package either. But overall, still, just nice and simple here, not a whole lot of buttons. As far as storage space, the Elantra Sport, it's pretty good for a vehicle of this class. So, first off in the doors here, you have a large map pocket with a bottle holder, which is great to see. Coming over to the center here, you have a nice deep cubby that you could fit, I think, most size smartphones in there without issue. You also find there 2 power outlets, which is rare, and so pretty cool to see that. Also an auxiliary jack and a USB jack in there as well. And then you have your heated seat controls here, a drive mode selector, and then you have 2 cup holders here behind the shifter, which are a pretty good size and should fit most drinks. And then you have the center armrest, which does have a nice feeling covering on it here, but isn't really too padded. It's a little firm for my taste, but still is nicer than hard plastic to rest your elbow on. And it does have the nice red stitching as well. And anyway, you open that up and you'll see another USB jack in there as well, and a large amount of space there. You can fit all your knickknacks you need, wallet, keys, sunglasses, all that type of stuff fit in there. Great. And so overall, a good amount of space there too. Backseat space in the Elantra Sport is actually roomier than you might expect. So, it's a really nice backseat, more of that red stitching. Anyway, though, I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself, I still easily have about 3 to 4 inches of legroom to spare back there. So plenty of legroom and feels pretty spacious. The only thing is headroom is a little less than I was expecting. I'm, again, 5'9", and I only had maybe an inch or 2 of headroom to spare there. So plenty of legroom, but not a ton of headroom compared to some of the others out there in this segment. But I think that's part of the cost you get. Well, this one's a little less boxy looking than some of the other competitors, and so they have better rear headroom because of that, but I do like the sloping roofline you have here in the Elantra Sport. I think it looks pretty good. Also, you'll find a fold-down center armrest, which also has 2 cup holders in it, and there's also a bottle holder in each of the doors as well, and that's about it. There aren't any kind of air vents or USB jacks or anything back there, but again, this is the Elantra. We're not talking about any of the larger vehicles, so I think that's totally acceptable, and overall, a pretty good back seat. Trunk space in the Elantra Sport is also really good for a small car. A nice wide opening to the trunk there. It's also not a very high lift over, so it's very easy to lift things up without having to, have to lift them up too high. It's just, again, a really deep and wide space there for the trunk. And also, if you lift up the cover for the trunk floor, you'll also find a spare tire, which is nice to have still. Some of the other vehicles in this segment, I think, are getting rid of them, so nice to have that in there as well. So overall, a great trunk. All right, so start up and go for a drive. The Elantra Sport here is really nice, at least for 2018. This new Hyundai key, it's this like dark brown finish, has metal buttons on the back. Just a super nice feeling key. It doesn't have a super heavy weight to it. It's a little light, but just looks really good. And so anyway, it's keyless entry and push button start here. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off in the 2018 Hyundai Elantra Sport. So it's April, but we still have some snow here coming down, sadly. The roads are a little wet, so I won't be able to push it quite as much, but we've got all season tires, so we should be fine. But the first thing you notice just pulling out there was this has the 7-speed dual clutch automatic in this one. You can get a 6-speed manual still, but this one does have the automatic. And since it's a dual clutch, you sometimes worry about those clutches and whether the engagement is smooth, but the engagement is really actually seamless from my experience so far. Starting from a stop, you don't feel any kind of engagement or roughness from the clutch there, and so overall pretty good so far with that. But as we're just going down this bumpy park road here, the suspension does have a little bit of a firmness to it. I think it's a little stiffer obviously than a regular Elantra. Also here in the Sport is the only model that gets the multi-link independent rear suspension, so the other ones just get an old torsion beam, and so that's a nice benefit of the Elantra Sport that should help to handle a lot better than a regular Elantra. Also, the 18-inch wheels help, and the bigger brakes, like I mentioned earlier. But it still isn't like a harsh ride or anything. Of course, this is still a great daily driver. Still very smooth, refined, and feels pretty good. Another thing to note is visibility is excellent here in the Elantra Sport. You have a very, the dashboard drops down nicely, so you have a nice large windshield, very easy to see out of. View out of the sides is great, and view out of the back is also really easy to see out of. So overall, really great as far as visibility goes. All right, so I put it into sport mode here, and so let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Right, so it's got pretty good punch here. So the Elantra Sport has a 1.6 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that does 201 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. And so with the manual transmission, you'll do 0 to 60 in 7.1 seconds, according to Motor Trend here. There isn't any cited that I could see, at least for the automatic, but I think it's mid 6-second range. I think it's a little quicker than the manual, most likely here, and that would sound about right. I'd say mid 6 seconds or high 6 seconds sounds isn't right from the feeling of this. But as we're going around a few corners here, it again just feels really good. You know, the steering doesn't have a ton of feel just yet, but it does have a decent amount of weight to it here. We'll chuck it into this corner and see a little more. Yeah, so it feels pretty good. The main thing that feels awesome about the Elantra Sport is just how light these are. It weighs just over 3,000 pounds, 3,034 pounds to be exact. And so that really, I mean, that helps. Anytime a car is lightweight, even if it doesn't have super advanced suspension or anything, it still handles really good just because there's not much mass to move around. But, I mean, we're going around this tight corner here, and very, very little body roll. I mean, it's pretty flat, and you know, again, I could push it a little bit more, but with this, you know, the roads being a little bit damp, don't want to try my luck too much. But since this is the dual clutch here, let's try the manual shifting and see how that does. Okay. Yeah, this thing is quick. Maybe it's quicker than 6.5 seconds or so, 0 to 60. It might be a little better than that, but has a good amount of sound to it. Just a little growl, but not a ton. You know, I would like a little more engine and exhaust sound. But anyway, as far as this paddle shifting goes, I think it auto shifted for me in first because I tried to take it to red line, and I think it shifted before I pulled the paddle. But you can see it's almost instant with downshifts. Upshifts does have a little bit of a delay to it, so strangely enough, usually downshift's the tough part for most of these dual clutches, but this one, downshift is no problem. It's the upshift that has a little bit of lag, but those downshifts are nice and quick. Another tight corner here. Yeah, this thing's really flat. Another thing I'll mention here is that you feel that turbo spool up a little bit, but it's really much improved. The last time I used this motor in a Hyundai was the Veloster Turbo a few years ago, and that I remember it having maybe a little more lag than this does. I think they've definitely improved it. You know, I think you know, it feels every bit of the 201 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque that it is. I think it's you know, feels a little punchier than, for example, the Mazda 3's naturally aspirated motor, which is down, you know, about a dozen or so horsepower. Every once in a while you do get a little more burble from the exhaust, but it's really rare, and I wish that it was more pronounced. You know, and I'm hoping that there's N versions, you know, those with the Veloster N, that supposedly crackles and pops a lot. So I'm hoping that kind of stuff trickles down here to the Elantra Sport, because I think it could totally get a little more volume without upsetting anyone, and give it a little more of a sporty feel. But overall, I mean, everything is really nicely dialed in. You know, I mean, throttle response isn't razor sharp like something like a Civic Si would be, but it is still, you know, pretty responsive. Brakes have a nice progressive feeling. You really start to feel the braking, you know, start to bite right at the top of the pedal there, and you know, everything feels pretty good. You know, even like I said, the steering feels nice and tight, and you know, the more that I use it, the more that I actually do enjoy the steering, and overall, I think it's pretty well done. But yeah, so I mean, this is an interesting place here with the Elantra Sport, because, you know, you look at stuff that's similarly priced, like the Civic Si. Now that's definitely, it feels like a bigger car. It feels bigger in the way that it handles. It still handles very well, you know, and I would say it probably handles just as flat, if maybe even a tiny bit flatter than this does, but it's a larger car, so it doesn't feel quite as nimble as this does, at least, you know, from, again, my experience here. And so, you know, I don't know if I would necessarily say one's better handling than the other, because you do get more car, I think, with the Civic. Just it's a roomier, bigger car. But one thing with the Civic Si is you can only get it with a manual transmission. So, I mean, I'm reviewing here the automatic version of the Elantra Sport. So if you don't want a manual, then you don't, that's not even an option. Same goes for stuff like the Focus ST and things like that. You know, like I said, Mazda 3 has a little less performance, so probably not a direct competitor, because it's also, you know, a little bit more affordable. Although I have to say, the value you get here, as someone pulls out right in front of me, the value you get here in the Elantra Sport is amazing. You know, because this one is 24 and change with this premium package, but these start at under $23,000, and at under $23,000, I mean, you get the heated leather seats, You get the 7-inch display, you know, all the nice sporty bits here, the flat bottom steering wheel, all that type of stuff. And so, you know, I mean, if you want to really just actually be like $1,000 less than a Civic Si, you still get, you know, some really nice stuff. For example, in the Civic, you only get cloth seats and you have leather here. Things like that are, you know, really nice benefits. That's always been Hyundai's strength, right? Is they give you more for your money, and so, you know, that helps you to, you know, not worry so much about, you know, the heritage, which they might not have as much of as something like a Civic Si does. But it's still, I think it's a really a great package, and I think that independent rear suspension definitely helps. Now, I have not flogged a standard Elantra, so I can't actually, you know, do a direct comparison between the two, but overall the handling here in the Elantra Sport does just really give you confidence. We're running 225 wide Hankook all-season performance tires here that have a good amount of grip. You know, I mean, obviously, like I said, it's a little slick, but it's still gripping pretty well, even, you know, with the conditions we have here. And even, you know, full throttle accelerations from a stop, you get a little bit of wheel spin, but it's not the you know, just crazy tire spinning frenzy that you get in stuff like the Kia Forte 5 that I, you know, reviewed a couple of months ago. That really loved to spin the front wheels, whereas this is a little more well-mannered as we go around this tight corner again. And yeah, it really feels like a little go-kart in a lot of ways. I like the smaller size. Like I said, a lot of these other vehicles in this class, they keep getting larger and larger to give you more for your money, and that's all well and good, but I really like the smaller, you know, size here you have with the Elantra Sport, especially, you know, when it comes to handling and sportiness. Now, obviously, if you just, you know, want lots of room and all that type of stuff, then maybe one of the others would be a better choice. But if you want something you can just toss into corners and throw around in a small compact package, I think the Elantra Sport's really one of the best choices out there. And like I said, you also get it for a little less than a lot of the competition. So overall, I'm pretty impressed here with the Elantra Sport. And now that I've been driving it for a little while longer as well, I will say it is, you know, really pretty refined. I mean, you might get a little more road noise than you might get in something like, you know, a Volkswagen, you know, GLI or GTI. You know, I think the materials aren't quite as nice as you get in those, you know, in a few areas. But you know, that's one other thing though. If you're considering, you know, something you want an automatic, you do have like the Volkswagen GTI and GLI to choose from. Now, those are a little bit more expensive though. That's again where the Hyundai wins out. But if you are willing to pay that extra money, I will say that Volkswagen's dual clutch usually is quicker. In my experience of using them, they are some of the best dual clutches out there with very snappy upshifts and downshifts. So if you want a really good, you know, dual clutch experience, I would probably suggest that. Again, if you are willing to spend the extra money, because GTIs, especially these days, are getting expensive. Even for one that still has cloth seats, like an SE trim, you're still looking at $30,000. And, you know, compared to, again, $22,900 that these start at, that's a big leap, especially for someone, you know, in this price segment, you know, where a $7,000 difference is a huge difference. So yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just Hyundai's really got everyone beat on pricing, it seems, and you know, the value is tough to beat. But anyway, huge thanks once again to Joe for providing me with this Elantra Sport to review for you guys today. They do have a couple of these in stock, so if you're interested in one of these and you're in the area, definitely give him a call at #1 Cochrane Hyundai of Monroeville. I have the link in the description to him, and all of his contact info in the description as well. So definitely give him a call if you'd like, and he'd be more than happy to help you out. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about the Elantra Sport in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.